exploring the KAVANGO Basin, located in northeast Namibia and northwest Scot. And here to give an update on their activities is their CEO, Scott Evans. I'll turn over to you, Scott.
Good morning. Thanks for coming. Yeah, for those of you here for the last presentation, the line, and now for something completely different is appropriate. So ReconAfrica is an exploration company. We are exploring for conventional reservoirs in northwest Botswana, northeast Namibia, and been doing so since 2014 when our founder, Craig Stanky, actually picked up the acreage. So today I'll just give an overview of the company and about the play and what we're doing. Oh, there we go. Things I'm not supposed to say. Okay. So where we are is called the KAVANGO Basin. It is one of the largest undeveloped petroleum basins onshore in the world. And again, through a combination of foresight and luck, the founders picked up the rights for they cover the entire basin. 8.5 million acres, 6 or so in Namibia and a remainder in Botswana. And you can see it on the map to the right side where Namibia and Botswana are relative to Africa and then where our leases fall. So beginning in 2019, activity picked up. I joined the company right at the end of 2019 after retiring from Halliburton. The company bought a rig, again, unusual move for an exploration company, but it's turned out to pay huge dividends and kind of give us control over our own destiny. Then based on the AERO-MAG data, we drilled our first two stratigraphic test wells, the first wells that have been drilled in Namibia since the 60s. And then we shot our first seismic, and now it's completed our second tranche of seismic. Again, as a Netherlands sole customer, we've had our first prospective resource report based on just the area touched by that seismic line. And there's a prospective resource of 1 billion barrels of oil and 1.4, assuming an 18% recovery. So we are just now, we've been pretty continuously active, either drilling or shooting seismic or both. We've completed our second seismic shoot, 750 kilometers worth, are processing it, and then interpreting. We have started a second round of drilling, and our one well is active, and it's a tight hole, and those of you who have worked in the Eastern Hemisphere know the seriousness with which the governments treat their data, and so we will always honor that. But the company has great working relationships with the government of Namibia and Botswana. Botswana much newer. The license terms are excellent to encourage exploration. These are licenses, both exploration and production continuous. There's no in-between license chance to renegotiate the deal between exploration and production phases. And 5% royalty and reasonable tax rate in the 30s. So success case economics are quite good for here. That's the overview of the play. We are a public company. If you have questions about the details of the capital structure and such, Grayson Anderson, sitting over there with the camera to the left, he can help you with that. But we are on the TSXV, also on OTC, and also trading in Germany. Basically about $1 billion of market cap. We have $61 million in cash, enough to fund our current programs and a little more. And we have no debt and own a drilling rig. So that's us, and we're covered by Haywood and Canaccord. So just to talk about Namibia, it's a really interesting story. The history of Namibia is originally a German colony, and you see the fingerprints of that in some of the quality of the infrastructure and some of the characteristics of the country. Then it went under South African rule for a long time, and all through apartheid, and really only became independent in the 90s. And then in the 90s, they looked to the north and saw Angola and all its activity. They had the first petroleum regime, not really well thought out, no takers. And then the current one came out in the early 2000s, and the terms onshore and offshore were reasonable and began to attract investors. Mainly the offshores had the most work done to it. There's been about 22 wells drilled, and I think everybody in our business has seen the results of the two, I would say, major giant discoveries that Total and Shell made offshore. They are in appraisal drilling, but again, why now? It's really a relic of the history of apartheid, then having Namibia gain its freedom. Onshore, you have that challenge, and then you also have the Kalahari Desert. So where our acreage is smack in the middle of the Kalahari Desert. So the shows, where any gas seeps or oil seeps are not evident. You don't see any local geology to go to the east or to the west. So we really just had AERO-MAG data to start with. But Namibia is now in the spotlight as one of the sort of the last remaining frontiers for major oil fields. Where our technical journey started, and again I joined in 2019, was AERO-MAG data, pretty good quality AERO-MAG data that was flown, I think in the late 2000s, and in our case processed by Bill Cathy down in Houston. And, AERO-MAG data is great to show you the outline of the basin, right? And that's what it did, and that's what kind of opened up their eyes when they started looking at it, is a pretty straightforward basin going across the lease and into Botswana. And after looking at the initial data, they got the data for Botswana and picked up that acreage. So that's the genesis of the play. The decision was made as onshore, seismic is, you want to make sure you've got something worth shooting over. And well, since we owned our own rig, are relatively cheap, $7 million. So we decided to pick you see the area in blue getting the green, we found a nose based on the AERO-MAG and drilled that. And so our first well and second wells both had significant oil shows, oil and some associated gas. The second well had mainly gas, some oil. And we said, okay, there's an active petroleum system here. Now let's go shoot some seismic. And so that's essentially how the program is set up and is going. Find the basin, see if the rocks in it have any chance of being hydrocarbon bearing, then shoot some seismic. So right now the emphasis on both now, we're starting to drill again, but we have a ways to go. This is a big area. It's like starting over in the DJ Basin. And so there's just a lot of seismic we've got to get. But that's the sub-basin. Geologists can pick out a series of sub-basins. You can see we're concentrating on one, but there's quite a few others. So if I jump in a little more detail, this is the Namibian area of the lease, and sort of the center part where we have our seismic data and the two wells we've drilled kind of in the middle. And what the seismic data showed, well, just to step back, for those who've worked in onshore Africa, the great majority of the onshore African oil fields are related to rifting. You have the East Africa Rift, which is pretty well known. When I was at Exxon, there's a Central Africa Rift that runs across Chad. Some wonderful fields there, but since it's Exxon, nothing was published about them. And then Jim Granath, who was on our board and is a local Denver geologist, some of you guys know him. Jim and some of his co-authors, looking at data, found what they call the Southern Trans-Africa Rift System. You could see it in outcrop and then in regional maps. And so the premise of our play is that we are in a rift system. Now, you can sort of kind of see that on the AERO-MAG, but once we got the seismic, it was really clear that yes, we do have a rift system. The age is, early Permian through maybe Triassic in terms of movement. We kind of know one end, but the total end, we're not sure of. It tends to get younger as you go east. And so the goal of the first shoot of seismic is to understand the rifts. And we based the lines on, A, what existing roads we have, because we don't want to go knock trees and go into villages we don't have to. There's a lot of roads up there. But also trying to cross the rifts and see if we can get an orientation. So that's what we were able to do. And this map is essentially showing the strike of one rift system, sort of in green, and then an area with no seismic data, and then what looks like a left lateral transferred second set of rifts. So those are the plays that we were going on from the beginning. And we were able to validate that, yes, this is a rift basin and there is fill. The surprising part is to the south, near the purple on the map. You also have this older structure referred to as the down row thrust system, more prevalent to the south and west. But the seismic showed really nice, coherent anticlines, kind of they call them on horizons, forming pretty nice plunging anticlines, sort of similar to some of the things you'd see in the Rockies. We're shooting more seismic on that, but that's a third play that sort of we discovered just by happenstance, really. But that's our play. Rift play. We'll talk about the Karoo in a second, the main reservoir. And the screen just went blank. And then it came back. So the other technical principal in our company is Dr. Ansgar Wanka, who was the department chair at the University of Namibia. He's done a lot of work in the Karoo. The Karoo is Permian age, maybe famous for way down in South Africa where it's a gas shell, that's not been developed yet. Karoo down there is more of a foreland, but the Karoo is all over southern Africa. And it's generally, if you look in the bigger picture, the older parts, the lower Karoo called the Dwaika is, we'll just say, deeper water, whether it's lacustrine or marine, that's one of our big debates. Then as you go higher up and look at the sea level curves, you do see an overall shoaling upward. And so on the top of it, and what you call here the Olangunda, it's red beds. So we have two target reservoir plays, if you will, from a stratigraphic standpoint. The two sections of the Karoo, one called the Eka, which is again sort of shallow marine or red beds, and then the Dwaika, which is going to be deeper water. And again, in this part of the world, with rift basins, it's usually lacustrine, ultimately. You don't have to have a marine incursion. Then below that, there's a major unconformity, and you go down into lower Paleozoic rocks, Molden and Otavi. Our first two wells, these are ones that are on is our first well out into the rift. We're really excited. And you can see the amount of growth in the lower part of the Karoo. It's related to, you kind of see that all over the basin. There's a lot of brilliant stratigraphic features that we're just starting to follow around and understand that are related to growth in the rift section. So that well is currently drilling, and I'll have to leave it at that. But it's exciting because we are seeing new rock. These are rocks that have not been seen. This lower section of the Karoo and some of these older rocks. It's quite prospective. Just again, from the first well. These are the reservoir results that Netherlands Sul calculated for us, and I point out the shallower the Karoo rocks, good reservoirs. As much as 20% porosities. Residual oil, without a doubt, some oil moved there, but it's not reservoired there. There's 3 carbonate zones, one unfortunately behind pipe. We couldn't get good logs on it, but it had good shows. We did get cores, so we can calibrate all this log analysis, and we had water saturations in the 50s for the dolomite zones. So that's the potential that we got out of our first well. So that's the geology 101 part. And again, it's really exciting to be back, having someone who's worked in shale my last 10 years, developing, plays here and then down in Delaware. It's nice to go back to conventional reservoirs. It makes you as a geologist think you got to get a source, you got to get a trap, you got to get a seal, you got to think about timing. A lot of the things that we may have forgotten, as we started working in the domain of shale, which is in one sense simpler and in another sense much more complicated. But it's fun to be back in conventional reservoirs. Owning a drilling rig, as someone who was an officer at Halliburton, would have seemed like nutty, right? Drilling rigs are hungry, they have a lot of O&M, but for an exploration company like us, if we had to depend on, the regular rig companies and pay the MOB and DMOB, pay the rig rates, sign up for a long drilling program without the ability to stop, we really just couldn't do what we're doing now. So I had just joined a company, the chairman of the board got a rig in Houston. It's an ex-Saudi Aramco rig, about 1,000 horsepower. Took it to Henderson Yard up by the airport, fitted it out, and shipped it over to Namibia, and it's been there ever since. And when we don't use it, we stack it, and when we use it, we drill it. And so it's really worked out, giving us the ability to really understand the basin, because otherwise the economics, for those of you who try to do international drilling, would be impossible. We might get one well someday. So we put a top drive on it. It's capable of getting to about 13,000 feet. It does what we need to do. It can drill. I'm not going to say we drill heavy horizontal wells with it, but we don't need to. We can drill our sidetrack from it. So, and it's mobile. So this has been a great plus for our company, having our own rig. From the seismic perspective, we're using a company called Polaris out of Calgary. And you can see in the solid lines, is a topo map. You can see in the north part, that's the KAVANGO River. We put in, even though our lease goes all the way up there, we on our own put zones of no work about 10 kilometers away, so we stop everything way before the river. First 500 kilometers in black, the new set just in dotted lines, and we are just now having it processed. We're using down under geophysical and absolute imaging. Down under, you guys have probably heard of, they're become quite big. And you can see in green the potential well locations we have for our fourth program, spreading about one well moving out of the current subbasin we're looking at. And we will have another set of seismic shoot before the end of the year. This is such a big area, and you can only, the amount of seismic that we need is critical. Now, to talk about the country and how we would actually monetize this. So again, Namibia as a country is fascinating. Some of the folks here I know have been there. Windhoek, the capital, is quite modern, but there's only 3 million people in the whole country, so it's lightly populated. Where we are is up in the northwest, and you can see our area green in a city called Rundu. It's one of the poorer parts of the country, but that's our largest, set of employment center is out of Rundu. What the map shows is roads. We were able to, put the rig on a boat, take it to Walvis Bay over on the coast, then drive it almost all the way up right to the rig site. So the quality of roads, for those who've been in Africa before, are just spectacular here. They're really well done, and that part of the infrastructure is in great shape. And we've gone again. The other thing that's important is the deep water port at Walvis Bay, a rail line that goes up to within 100 kilometers of our acreage. That's how we would monetize oil. And then from a gas perspective, in green you can see a power transmission line. For those of you working in Africa, the word gas to power has become super critical. The majority of the folks that work for us in Namibia, especially up in Rundu, they'll be working on these high-tech projects with us, GPS-mounted, wireless side nodes, and they'll go home, and they don't have electricity, right? So the need for power there is significant, and they really refer to it as energy poverty. So one of the keys for Africa is to be able to have gas to generate electricity locally, and then put it onto the grid. And so we've already been working with the National Power Company on how to do that. And the grid runs right through our lease. So there's part of the reason we have such strong support within the governments is the idea of being able to raise, the northern part of Namibia out of energy poverty and kind of catch up to the rest of the world is really, really important. This is a country that imports just about all of its electricity right now and pays high rates. So the infrastructure for us is really good in Namibia. And again, I kind of hit on this, how we would be commercial. Truck to all is pay for oil. eventually get a rail extension if we're successful. Walvis Bay is a wonderful deep water port, and our partner NAMCOR has acreage there. They have tankage. And then for gas, it'd be gas to power from the very beginning, so we wouldn't flare. We would make sure from the very beginning that we are net zero in terms of our new wells. From the ESG perspective, we have to earn a license to operate. Having worked in the Eastern Hemisphere for a long time, first with Exxon and then with Halliburton, I've seen things handled well and maybe not so well in working with the national companies. From the very beginning, we've made a commitment to ESG initiatives. Even as an exploration company, we put 10 million Canadian aside for that. From the environmental side, obviously we are in the press a lot, but at the end of the day, in the Namibia area, it's the Kalahari Desert. It's very, very lightly populated by people and by wildlife. But we're making sure we understand it. We're doing the hydrocensus work, our own biodiversity projects in conjunction with the ministries, and we're looking to do reforestation. Social, again, the communities there are poor, but they have a lot of potential resource. As a geologist, we drill water wells to go with our the exploration wells. And first one we counted, they just have this beautiful aquifer. But it's not. There's no straws in there. So what happens is you have this wonderful aquifer, and people are carrying on water on their heads because they only have a few water wells. So we've gone on a program of just drilling water wells, and turning them over to the community, and putting solar pumps on them. We've done 22 of those, and that's, I think, been a real boon to the local community, and I think a big help for the country. And of course, from a social perspective, oil and gas is onshore oil and gas is a very intimate relationship between the company and our neighbors. We work really hard to be good neighbors. Governmental, again, strong commitment to local hiring. We have a 100% owned Namibian affiliate called Reconnaissance Energy Namibia. That's where the money goes. That's who's employed, and that's a 100% Namibian company, from the GM down to the folks working in the field, all Namibian. And we're very strongly committed to keeping that up. We also have strong gender and diversity programs, and of course, very strong potential attention to anti-bribery and anti-corruption. So, that's me, almost on time. Again, this is ReconAfrica. We are an onshore exploration company looking for conventional reservoirs. We have 100% leasehold of the KAVANGO Basin, one of the largest undeveloped petroleum basins in the world. We are getting back into a drilling mode. We have one well ongoing. We are continuously shooting 2D seismic. We have very strong local and government support. And Namibia provides a very stable environment to work in from a commercial standpoint, and we have good fiscal terms. As we grow our seismic base, it's very clear that we are in a rift basin. So we now know how to explore and look at structures. It's clear we have two plays: the Karoo, which was the primary, and then these older rocks, we call them the Molden, Paleozoic. And we have a third play, which is more conventional sled runner anticlines in the older rocks. And we aren't arrogant enough to think we can develop this all ourselves. We have obviously had people talk to us. We're preparing to open a data room and talk to folks about potential partnering. So that's me. And, thank you for your attention.
All right, thank you, Scott. If you'd like to ask Scott and his team questions, they'll be over here in Lawrence B in the breakout room.